each thinking about scale? Because whereas, I mean, there's still such a small audience of online consumers utilizing Twitter, and it's a very sort of one-to-one communication channel. And whereas brands struggle with wanting engagement and inviting engagement and bribing engagement in some ways, you guys, I mean, media and news outlets probably have, for better or worse, more engagement than you want at times. So how do you envision scalability of this, given that your days aren't getting longer, your teams would have to get larger, and it kind of goes back into the how's that sustainable from a business perspective, and how are you thinking about that long term?
Well, we're still, basically our reporters have gone from, they just reported for print to now you gotta, well, we want you to write stories for online, we want you to blog, and we want you to tweet and, post that on Facebook, and, we keep asking, shoot a little video, asking for a little bit more as time goes on, and I've just been surprised and impressed by the fact that they just kind of take it on, and I think that if they feel like it helps them in their reporting, it doesn't feel like you got to do more, and the scalability is not too bad. I mean, I guess if that's what you're asking, more kind of personal. It's not, as long as it's useful as opposed to just like, oh no, I have to do this. I think it's worked. When it feels like we're just throwing something else on them, it's been kind of a pain to them. I've heard so many of our reporters say that it's useful for them. All these new things are just useful for them, so they're getting more ways to write their stories and to tell their stories.
Getting back to that corporate account thing, Twitter's not mandatory for our folks on their personal accounts. Some do it, some don't. I really encourage sports people at Longhorn games to get on there. Last year's OU game was the first big one where we really jumped in from a game, and before the game was there creating K-Bowls at statesman.com, Seth Golden and statesman.com, or whatever they have on Twitter, creating their accounts for them, saying, okay, you're going to do this. Other than that, we don't make people do things. But I'm sure where I was going with that. But anyway, so it's an optional deal. What is not optional for us is blogging, breaking news as it's happening. And that's just changed the story writing process. Previously, a reporter would work on the story during the day, and at 5 o'clock they would start writing the story. Now, if something happens early, they start writing, they add to it, they add to it, they add to it, as they know things, and at the end of the day, they sort of polish all that up into an actual newspaper story. So that really, it takes more time, but it's useful both to the reporter and certainly to our readers.
I found it interesting that we're taking print people and making them more multimedia, whereas both Chelsea and Elise are multimedia people, or kind of have to go the other way, or at least people at your stations do, or the places you've worked. How has that dynamic worked?
It's actually kind of been a shoving match. Elise is not included in this because she knows what is going on. But a lot of reporters, either they're savvy and they're like, okay, this is important for my career, or they're like, oh no, I just came in here to do, to be on the 5 and 6, and that's all I'm going to concentrate on. And they're really resistant. I still have to fight people to get web scripts at certain times, and it's just like, well, you're kind of digging your own grave as we move into, the future. And if you don't know how to do this in 5 or, and God, even 2 years, 1 year, you are really screwing yourself.
Yeah, you know what though? In defense of television news reporters, it's just such. I mean, the industry can be such a beatdown. It's just so hard. You're not only working in a flood or a fire or in a hurricane or in 105-degree temperatures, but you have 8 bosses for everything you do. So it's like Office Space, but in a bad, weather situation. So to have another task where, you need to write something else and get that to Chelsea, it does often sound like a real pain. Obviously, I think if you take ownership of the whole multimedia thing and believe in it, it's absolutely different, because I found that I was more identified for my blog than anything I ever did on television. And we're the #1 rated station, or KB was the #1 rated station for a while, so I found that, I got a lot more interaction, a lot more response and relevance because of multimedia, and that was largely a motivator for me. But I have to say, you really have to, people who knock Twitter, I say, don't knock it until you've tried it, because you need to do it, and then you might find the utility there. And I think it's the same thing. It's a struggle because, we go into work each day kind of beat down already, so.
Yeah.
So following on that real quick with Elise, so you're jumping from the mainstream kind of TV broadcast to something that's really new in anywhere, but in Austin for sure. And what opportunities do you see that you didn't have at the TV station? What's the freedom that you think you're going to find, and what limitations will you have?
Right. Well, we've already talked about the main piece for me, the big attraction in terms of freedom was just being able to be part of something where you could start from scratch. And so all these, new developments that have come out lately, you don't have to work into what you were already established, but you just start it. And then we can also kind of experiment with things, and if it doesn't work, start over. We have this real opportunity to try things out and be more experimental. That was an attraction to me, but obviously the big overarching reason was because I believe in journalism, and tens of thousands of journalists have been losing their jobs over the last few years, and I think we really need to chart out whatever way or try whatever experiment to try and keep this model alive for the people, for the public good. I think we're going to be limited because I'm used to being able to call and say, I'm from this traditional news organization, give me an interview, I want access in this way. Now we're going to we're on this massive marketing push so that when we call sources, they know, oh yes, it's the Texas Tribune, it's this new thing, and so that we can get that interview with the speaker that we've been able to get before at our previous organizations, and that we can't, be on the floor in the House and the Senate and all these other venues. So access is a question, limited resources is a question, it is a nonprofit, we're only going to survive if people continue supporting us in principle, so we'll see what happens.
But even with access, aren't you going to be able, because you are Elise and you have this stupid relationship with people at the Capitol that's going on?
I talked to the guy at Politico because I wasn't sure whether I wanted to give up doing what I was doing before, and he said he found, Politico was also only started in 2007, but now it's a big name in political reporting. And what it was started by 5 to 7 former Washington Post, New York Times reporters, and Mike Allen, one of the founding members of Politico that I spoke to, said he found it was better to hire 5 reporters who could all get their calls returned than to hire 50 who could not. So the idea with Texas Tribune is the same. They hired reporters with names, with cachet, so that, off the bat we could kind of have the access that we were used to. But I still anticipate some limitations.
Thanks. And that's a nice segue about Politico and getting callbacks and credibility of reporters, because I'm interested in the connection, what you guys think is the connection between the recent, or the demise over the last several years because of funding issues in print media of investigative journalism, and how social media might revive that and maybe sort of have the media as a source again to bring accountability back to government and to all kinds of other areas where we've really seen it be more of an entertainment outlet instead of a news outlet, and I'm really hopeful about social media bringing that back, and I'm interested to hear what you guys think about that.
I only have one point real quick to make before somebody else wants to take this, but I think the way that social media brings back investigative journalism is by showing that journalists in these traditional roles do not have to do the news of the day reporting anymore. We don't have to go to the so-and-so press conference where they announce, a new Chick-fil-A sandwich or whatever, because Chick-fil-A can just communicate with you directly. So that being said, that leaves journalists the time and the resources to do the digging, the kind of enterprise reporting that we're not seeing as much anymore. So it's almost kind of a negative reason, right? Social media obliterates the need for news of the day reporting. So therefore, journalists who are still in traditional organizations should focus on enterprise, engaging, investigative journalism.
I think that, also social media, because we can kind of use it as a sounding board to see what people are liking and disliking, I think that if we get a lot of response from social media saying we really like these investigative pieces, then newsrooms will sit up and pay attention, because right now if the audience is like, well, we just want entertainment and we just want, car crash and fire news, then that's what we're going to focus on. But until, media is still kind of, at least our bosses are really concerned about this being something that makes money. So when people say, this is what I want from my news, then we'll try to give it to them.